Welcome, this is Cheating Facts. Tell me where you're watching from. I discovered my wife's affair through a company-wide email meant for her lover, who happened to be my boss. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was wrong, but everyone around you seemed to know more than they were letting on? Sometimes the signs are right there, but we're the last ones to see them. My name is Marcus, and for 8 years I thought I had the perfect marriage with Celeste. We met in college, got married young, and built what I believed was a solid life together. She worked in marketing at a tech startup downtown, and I was a senior analyst at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm. Different companies, different industries, but we made it work. The first crack in my perfect world came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through my coffee, when my phone buzzed with a company-wide email. The subject line read, Q2 strategy meeting, all hands. Standard corporate stuff. But when I opened it, my blood went cold. The email wasn't about quarterly projections or team building exercises. It was a deeply personal message from Celeste to someone named D, about meeting at the Riverside Hotel that weekend. The language was intimate, loving, the kind of words she used to say to me during our honeymoon. My hands were shaking as I read it again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This had to be a mistake, some kind of technical glitch. But there it was, sent from Celeste's personal email account to what should have been her lover's private address, except it had somehow gone to our entire company directory instead. I looked around the office with fresh eyes. Jenkins from accounting was staring at his screen with his mouth slightly open. Maria from HR had her hand covering her mouth, glancing in my direction with what I now recognized as pity. And then there was my boss, David Richardson, sitting in his glass office with his face buried in his hands. David, the D from the email. The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. All those late nights, Celeste claimed to be working on the Henderson campaign. The weekend team-building retreats that seemed to happen every month. The new jewelry, she said, came from bonuses I never saw reflected in her pay stubs. The way she'd started dressing differently, wearing perfume to work meetings that used to be casual affairs. I sat there for 20 minutes, reading and rereading that email while my coworkers pretended to work around me. Finally, David emerged from his office and walked over to my desk. His face was pale, and he couldn't meet my eyes. Marcus, he said quietly, could I see you in my office? The walk to his office felt like a death march. Every pair of eyes in that room was on me, and I realized with growing horror that this wasn't news to them. The careful way Jennifer had been asking about my weekend plans. The awkward silence that would fall when I mentioned Celeste at office parties. The way conversations seemed to stop when I entered break rooms. They all knew. David closed the door behind us and gestured to a chair. He looked older than his 45 years. His usually perfect hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. I don't know how to begin, he started, then stopped. Marcus, we need to talk about what just happened. How long? I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out his office window at the city skyline. 6 months, he finally whispered. Maybe 7. 7 months. While I was working 60-hour weeks to save for the European vacation Celeste had been planning. While I was researching fertility doctors, because we'd been trying to start a family. While I was picking out anniversary gifts and planning surprise dinners for a woman who was lying to my face every single day. The email, I said. How did that happen? David's laugh was bitter. Autofill. She typed D in the recipient field, and instead of selecting my personal email, she hit the company directory. Your company directory, specifically, because she'd apparently been researching your firm for. I don't know why. The irony was almost poetic. In trying to hide her affair, Celeste had exposed it to the one place where it would hurt me most. Not just personally, but professionally. How was I supposed to work with these people now, knowing they'd all been watching my marriage crumble from the sidelines? Did everyone know? I asked. David nodded slowly. Not everyone, but enough. It started at the conference in Denver. She was there for the Morrison account, and I was keynoting. We ended up at the hotel bar, talking about work, and then he trailed off, finally looking at me directly. Marcus, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to know that I never intended for this to happen. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers that would make sense of the past 7 months of my life. Instead, I felt empty, hollowed out, like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out everything that made me who I was. I need to go home, I said, standing up. Marcus, wait. Let's talk about this. About what happens next with work, with the teams you're managing. I need to go home, I repeated, and walked out of his office without looking back. The drive home was a blur of red lights and half-formed thoughts. I kept thinking about the morning 3 weeks earlier when Celeste had kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me. How normal it had felt. How she'd reminded me to pick up milk on the way home from work. Because she was going to be late finishing up a client presentation. She was probably with David that night, too. I pulled into our driveway and sat in the car for 10 minutes, staring at the house we'd bought together 2 years ago. The house where we'd planned to raise kids, to grow old together, to build the kind of life that people write songs about. Now it just looked like a building full of lies. Celeste's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was either at work or somewhere else. I used my key and walked into our living room, seeing it with different eyes. The throw pillows she'd insisted on buying last month. The wine glasses in the sink from a dinner I apparently hadn't been invited to. The calendar on the refrigerator with mysterious meetings that I'd never thought to question. I was sitting on our couch, still trying to process everything, when my phone started ringing. First David, then my assistant Rebecca, then numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading fast. When Celeste finally came home at 7:30 that evening, I was still sitting in the same spot. She walked through the door with her usual bright smile, chattering about her day, asking about mine. It was such a perfect performance that, for a moment, I wondered if I'd imagine the entire thing. How was work, honey? She asked, kissing the top of my head as she passed behind the couch. Interesting, I said. We had some unexpected communication today. She was in the kitchen now, her back to me as she opened the refrigerator. Oh, what kind of communication? I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot I'd taken of her email. The kind where you accidentally send love letters to my entire office instead of your boyfriend. The refrigerator door slammed shut. The silence that followed was so complete. I could hear the neighbors' dog barking 3 houses down. When she finally turned around, her face had changed completely. The mask was off, and underneath was a stranger I didn't recognize. Marcus, she started, but I held up my hand. 7 months, I said. My boss. My workplace. Everyone I work with has been watching me be the fool married to the woman who's sleeping with David Richardson. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, then opened it again. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I said, standing up. The only question now is whether you're going to keep lying to me, or if we're going to talk about what happens next. The next hour was the longest of my life. Celeste told me everything, or at least her version of everything. How it started innocently. How David made her feel appreciated in ways I apparently hadn't. How she'd been planning to tell me, but the timing was never right. How she loved us both, but didn't know how to choose. By the time she finished talking, I realized I was married to someone I'd never really known at all. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing that while I'd been living my life normally, trusting completely, an entire network of people had been watching my marriage disintegrate and saying nothing. My coworkers who'd made awkward small talk. David, who'd given me performance reviews and asked about my weekend plans while sleeping with my wife. Even Celeste, who'd kissed me goodbye every morning and asked about my day every night. They'd all known what I didn't know about my own life. That's the thing about betrayal that no one tells you. It's not just about what your partner did. It's about realizing how many people were complicit in your humiliation, how many opportunities there were for someone to tell you the truth, and how alone you were in your own marriage. 3 months later, I'm living in a different apartment and working for a different firm. David resigned a week after the email incident, though I heard through mutual connections that he and Celeste are still together. I hope they're happy. I really do. Because someone should get something good out of the wreckage of what I thought was my life. If you're watching this and something feels off in your relationship, trust that instinct. Don't wait for a company-wide email to tell you what everyone else already knows. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and let me know in the comments how you've dealt with betrayal in your own life. Sometimes sharing our experiences is the only way to make sense of them.